judging from how early people got on today, and also from the questions that have already popped up, my subject of the end of mind resonated across the board with everyone, because it is a big subject. It is something that comes up over and over again in spirituality, no matter what kind of spiritual practice you may have. And as I was looking through the questions here before I started, I saw the common mistake that has made, that out of which all the questions have arisen, and the basic misunderstanding of mind that is at the heart of our confusion about it, and at the heart of our struggle with mind and thought and all the stuff that comes up during a spiritual practice that seems to be an obstacle on the path to truth. So we have to start with understanding what mind actually is. What it is besides the word mind. We have to understand the way human thinking works, right? I mean, the mind is nothing but a word for thinking, right? That is the continual flow of thoughts that we experience. That's what mind is. It is a word that represents a complex functioning. Right? Body represents a set of complex functions. We think of the body as a thing, but it is not a thing. It is a collection of trillions of cells, each one of those cells being a living thing in and of itself. Really, tens of trillions of cells. And on top of that, there are tens of trillions of little bacteria throughout the entire body, a lot of them in the gut, that without which we could not survive. They're not regarded as the body proper, the way a cell that makes it up, but the whole functioning of the body includes those. And so what we find with the word body is that it is a word that is simply a distillation of an enormously complex set of functionings going on to a single word that we can then communicate. Now, this process of distilling things down to a word to represent a more complex function is called abstraction. So we abstract this complex stuff into a single word so you and I can talk. And when I say body, you know what I'm talking about. Now, one of the artifacts, the side effects, you might say, of this process of abstraction is because the moment a word gets created, an abstraction gets created, it becomes a mental object. It becomes a thing in and of itself, which means it starts to get divorced from the functioning that it represents. Now this happens all the time, right? We anthropomorphize the wind, right? And storms and storm clouds and stuff. We don't think of them as the complex functioning. You know, we see a picture of the wind, right? It's this cloud with the big puffy cheeks blowing. But there's nothing blowing there. It's not a thing at all. But because of the way we think, because of the patterns that form, that make up the mind, that abstraction becomes a thing in and of itself, and it starts to collect stories around it. We make up stories about it. There's all sorts of imaginary things that go on around it, right? And so now the body becomes judged, it becomes criticized, it becomes categorized. It takes on a myth of its own, right? As its nature, where it came from, what it's about. And if enough of those abstractions gather together, another abstraction will happen on top of that. Right? The ultimate abstraction being the universe, right? A single three-letter word that represents everything. And now we even talk about, well, the universe did this, and you know, the universe, I really thought the universe gave this to me. What's the universe have in store for me? Notice we've created another abstraction. And here's the key to this whole story. We have made it an entity separate from the very thing that the abstraction is representing. Now, to bring this home to what I'm talking about right now in terms of mind, that's what mind is. The word mind is an abstraction that represents the universal experience all human beings have of the flow of thoughts, or what we call thinking, right? This sequence of thoughts that seems to be unending. We have a word for that. It's called mind. Now, because we've created that abstraction, and that abstraction has become so ingrained into the thinking process itself, it has taken on characteristics that it doesn't actually have. Right? We have imagined it to be an entity that is functioning. So we thought, oh, my mind just keeps generating these thoughts. My mind is a problem. But there's no such thing as mind. There's not a thing generating the thoughts, any more than there's a big puffy cloud generating wind. That is not what it's doing. There is no such thing as mind. But because of the way this all works, the moment I begin to get kind of lost in the abstraction, it becomes for me an entity separate from myself. It becomes a thing. The mind is a problem. Oh, the mind keeps messing me up. The mind did this, the mind did that. Right? And when in fact there is no mind, but because I'm so convinced that there's this thing there making all the bad thoughts happen, or the destructive thoughts, or the self-sabotaging thoughts, I'm fighting against what is nothing other than my own imagination. I have created the mind as an entity. And here's where it gets even more subtle. The moment I believe it to be an entity that is resisting or influencing or doing anything to me, I create the effect of something influencing me or hindering me or doing something to me, when in fact there's nothing there. I create the effect out of my belief in it. Are you following this? It is very, very subtle. I want to read to you something from the Ribhu Gita. Ribhu is, that's not the one I wanted. Get out of that. I did not want that. I wanted you. The Ribhu Gita, Ribhu, it's a very old a text written originally in Sanskrit. There's a couple of verses here I want to read from you. It says, "There is no such thing as the troublesome mind. No world of names and forms, not the least bit of ego." Now, the verse before says this, and this will blow your mind. If one gives the slightest room for the thought that the mind exists, pure awareness itself will vibrate as the ruffled mind, which is the parent of all trouble and illusions. Therefore, one should ever abide in the conviction that there is no mind, and that the pure awareness self is the sole existence. This is the easy way to conquer the mind with all of its vagaries. You see, whatever you believe into existence. And by existence, I simply mean calling the infinite potential into form. Now, why can you do that? Because you are the awareness. The awareness is not something else. When it's talking about pure awareness itself will vibrate as the ruffled mind, it's talking about you. we think of ourselves as a person, this personal entity, yet another entity that we have that is but an abstraction, the person, when the person is simply the sum total of all of the functioning of thought, emotion, and sensation, everything that makes up human experience. We consider that to be, we put that all together and we call it GP or Bob or David or whatever, right? And then we believe that this thing, this name we've given to this functioning is an entity, aka me, myself, my existence. This is the nature of the separate self that has been called into existence by your belief in it. There is no person. There is no separate self. There is no ego. There is no mind. But because you are that perfect awareness. And when I'm talking about a perfect awareness, I am not talking about some state out there. I'm talking about you right now, listening to me as you are. Right this second. You are that perfect awareness. What you believe, the belief that arises, becomes manifest in form around you. Because the infinite potential can manifest absolutely anything. So, if you leave the slightest room that the mind exists as an entity, separate from you, your own nature as pure awareness, as the creative power of the universe, will manifest a troublesome mind, a ruffled mind, a distorted mind, a disturbed and distressed mind, when in fact it does not exist, right? So when I say it does not exist, what I mean is it isn't an entity in and of itself. It is only an appearance being called into a temporary state of presence or existence by the belief in it of the one viewing it. Did you follow that? I don't think I've ever gone this deep on the subject before, and if I've lost you, please don't worry about it. Please do not worry about it. But now, after that verse where he talks about will vibrate, the pure awareness will vibrate to the ruffled mind. That's where the Ribhu Gita says, there is no such thing as a troublesome mind. There's no mind that's causing you a problem. If you believe there is, you will experience it. Not because it actually exists, but because you believe it. And your belief is so powerful, it literally creates the world. There is no such thing as the troublesome mind. No world of names and forms, not the least bit of ego, which is simply the belief in a mind personally. All these are nothing but the perfect Brahma self, which I am. In this conviction one should abide firmly until one achieves the state of sleepless sleep, which is alert peace eternal. What you are experiencing is the perfect Brahma self, believed to be an entity separate from you. But that belief in it as an entity separate from you and manifesting as a troublesome mind is the perfect self. Because only the perfect self could do that. I think you might be able to recognize now that all the comments and all the questions that were there all assumed unwittingly that the mind was some kind of thing, some kind of external entity that I had to get rid of, overcome, quiet, make it shut up, see through. Right? The way you see through it is to recognize there's nothing there. My belief in it is all there is to it. The knowing of a thing is the thing. However I know it, that is how it will turn up. Let me see if I can remember the way Mooji put it. He says, the itemized objects of perception cannot appear without the belief in them that appears in the seer of them. Oh, I'm glad I remember that. It's been a long time since I quoted that. The objects of perception, the itemized object of perception, cannot appear without the belief in them that happens in the seer of them. The knowing of a thing and the thing are one. There is no mind separate from your belief in it. There is no entity out there self-sabotaging you, creating problems, making it different, making it difficult, making you struggle. There's nothing doing that. There's simply a thought that says, there's something out there making me struggle. If you accept that thought, you will have the experience as if there was something out there making you struggle, when in fact, you're doing it to yourself. Not realizing the immense power that you possess, that literally creates the world. So let's see if I just happen to miss anything what people were saying. So, hello Rosario and Merck, my buddy in Sweden. Thoughts usually aren't very interested in the ending of mind. Right off the bat, now you've made thought an entity that has interest or not interest. There is only the thought, and the thought would be, I'm interested in that. I'm not interested in that. But the thought has no sentience. It's just a vibration happening, like a ripple in the water. Ripple in the water is unaware that it's a ripple, right? There has to be consciousness there to perceive it. So the thought, saying the thought isn't interested in that is a pure projection, isn't it? Right? The thought has no interest or lack of interest. It's simply a thought that says, I'm interested, I'm not interested. I care, I don't care. But the thought itself does not care or not care. It has no sentience. You know, like Siri, right? Siri, where's Oma? I'm sorry, I don't know. There's no I there, right? How do you feel today, Siri? I feel great, thank you. There's no feeling there, right? So only if they can still be there to report about it. Again, notice that even the thought of thought is a projection. Thought, as a separate entity, does not exist. It is a vibration in the infinite sea of awareness. And it is awareness vibrating. It is the sea of awareness itself vibrating. You are that awareness. So there is no... There's no such thing as thoughts. Really, put the word thought out of the equation and all the ideas we then have about thought, and you realize that thought is an abstraction. It's a word. It's a name given to an experience. What is it that you're experiencing? Yeah, we all experience what we call thought, but what's the actual experience? It's a vibration. It's a ripple. It's a very lightning, it's a quicksilver energy fluctuation, a modulation. And what it is a self-modulation or a self-configuration. That's how Balyani puts it in the Treatise on Oneness. It's a self-reconfiguring of the self. Interest seems to be coming from it. The interest seems to be coming from another faculty. Yes, but even that interest is yet another vibration, isn't it? Anything perceivable is a vibration. Now here's the subtlety of it. The perceiving of it and the perceiver of it are one. The act of perceiving it is the creation of it. You are not perceiving something that exists independently of your perception of it. You following that, Merck? Crispin, hello. The mind has its place in life, doesn't it? But sometimes it crosses the border, so for me the question is not how to get rid of it, but how to keep it in check. As long as you believe that it is an entity that needs to be kept in check, you will be fighting it. There's nothing there. The mind has its place in life. The mind as a belief in something independent, functioning independently from the self, has no place in life because it's a total illusion. It's totally false. It doesn't exist. Right? What the functioning that we have called mind right? Take away the abstraction, that word, mind, and all that goes with it, and just look at the actual phenomena of everyday experience. And yes, that has its place in life. That does not only have its place in life, it is life. Life being nothing other than the manifest functioning of the self, the dynamic aspect of myself, which mortals have named God, right? Which is simply the self, that which is the essence. The self is nothing but the reality of everything. Right? It is not a self like a person. The reality behind everything that appears is the self. The reality behind everything around me, the screen, the computer you're looking on, right? You can see that everything you experience is a complex combination. It's a functioning of other things. So what is the actual reality? What is it that brings that all together to temporarily make the appearance of this thing, which then dissolves later? The essence, the reality behind it is the self. Matter of fact, Nisargadatta's guru, let me see if I can say his name, Siddham Shvara, even used the word self and reality interchangeably. Reality is looking at the world. Reality is what's looking at your computer screen right now. That's the self. That is the self I am referring to. It is not an abstraction. So when you talk about mind as an entity rather than simply a word representing something else, then no, it has no place in life because it doesn't exist. Matter of fact, it's inevitably in conflict with life because it has lost its connection to life. It's like you uprooted a tree and you're stuck it somewhere and you're hoping it's going to help you. It can't. It's already dead. And that's what we've done. We've created this imaginary entity that has been removed from the functioning of life, when in fact all it is a word to describe the functioning of life. When it is seen as the functioning of life, and life is seen as the functioning of the self, then yes, it has its place. Right? Now it's thoroughly in its place. It couldn't get out of its place if it wanted to. Right? Are you following this, everybody? I kind of hope so. I hope so. I don't know what possessed me to talk about it like this today, but I just have to.